Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interviewed titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today is an inspiring leader and the CEO of U.S. Aerials and Equipment. It's the only minority-owned equipment rental company. They are focused on customer service and offering a high quality and large variety of aerial lifts and rental equipment for any type of project. Their motto is, if you need it, we got it. Please welcome my guest today, Terrance Weber.
Morning.
Good
Thanks
morning.
for having me.
Very happy to have you on the show today. I'm excited to get into your background. We talked a little bit here in studio about what got you to where you are as the CEO and president, an entrepreneur. We're going to get into all of that. But first, what I like to get started in is a little bit about yourself, your background, who you are as a person and your family, and maybe what little stories in your life growing up that got you to where you are today.
Well, once again, my name is Terrance. I'm from the president CEO of U.S. Aerials and Equipment. I was born, raised in a little town called Port Washington on the North Shore of Long Island.
Yeah.
My dad was a construction company owner, probably one of the only union carpentry shops that was owned by a minority, in his day. He owned a union carpentry shop for about 40, 50 years out of Queens Village. And I grew up around that and grew up around just the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Went to college in Washington, D.C. at Howard University. And then from there, I went to flight school in Vero Beach at Flight Safety. And from there, got back to New York and was just trying to figure it out, And my grandmother had gotten sick, and she lived to about almost her 102nd, a month before her 102nd birthday.
Wow.
So for her last 10 years, I spent her last 10 years with her because my other brothers were married and they had kids, and she kind of gave me the nod and the wink and said, hey, look, everybody's married with kids. I tell you what, you spend a few days a week with me, and I'll help you fulfill whatever it is you're trying to do. And I took her up on it, and it was probably the most pivotal moment in my life, in my business career, because it took me from being an employee to becoming more entrepreneurial in thought. I got into sales. I was actually doing like art sales, like art auctions and whatnot. And the company that I was working for went out of business. So I went looking for a new gig, and I found this job, just a job listing for this company called Dam Equipment on Long Island. And they were in the rental business, the equipment rental business. And I got a pretty sizable job for them with Donaldson Acoustics at the Bronx Terminal Market. They had been installing panel on the Bronx Terminal Market, and they were using jumper scaffolds, which fall under cranes and derricks. And that was right at the time when there was a large crane accident. So they shut down all the jumper scaffolds. We went in to do a pitch, and we were pitching this gentleman that actually knew my father. He pretty much just took the meeting just as a courtesy to my old man, who had been passed, but he knew who my old man was. My old man did a lot of work back in the day with Donaldson. And on the, I'm seeing that this meeting is about to die, and in the back of my head, I remember him saying, "Oh yeah, he was he was thinking about buying this 80-foot scissor lift that nobody had." So tell him about the 80-foot scissor lift. And as soon as I said that, I saw his eyebrow go up. And at that point, I knew that he had some interest. And he said, oh, definitely tell us about that. So we told him about it. And then it turned out that because they had gotten shut down with the jumper scaffolds, the 80-foot scissor lift was perfect for them.
What they need.
But there was only one that we knew of. So then I did a bunch of research, and I found this other company out west called Acme that re-rents to the rental industry. And they had 4 of the 80SLs. The one that he was looking at was the prototype for the 80SL. So he bought that one. We re-rented a bunch of 80SLs. And there it is. I was in the business. But, you know, this is a really fickle business. So instead of it being a really good time, you know, they realized that, oh, shoot, I got to pay commission on this now. So instead of him paying me commission, he's like, this guy doesn't know anything. We'll just fire him.
Oh, wow.
So they fired me. And I was like, kind of pissed off.
Sure.
So I went home, talked to my grandmother, and she's like, well, do you like it? Do you like what you're doing there? And I was like, you know, that's kind of interesting. She's like, well, who else does it? I said, yeah, that's a good point. So, you know, I did some research, and the first person I called was Vito. He's kind of a well-known guy in the industry, works for United Rentals. And Vito told me that, Vito probably didn't even remember this, but Vito told me that they weren't hiring in New York, but they were definitely hiring out in Oklahoma. So I figured I'm not going to Oklahoma. So I went down the next company on the list, which was Able Equipment. And I called the owner, Steve Laganis, who subsequently become a friend, mentor, and strategic partner. And he told me to come in, and I met him at Able Equipment, and he literally interviewed me in the parking lot as he was running around doing what he needed to do. I mean, back then, Able wasn't a whole lot bigger than I am right now. And he gave me the job. And I came in the next day, and he handed me a phone, a box of business cards, an iPad, and then he reminded me that salesmen don't hang out in the office.
Yes.
Get out and sell.
That's right.
You're a salesman now.
Yeah.
And pretty much off I went.
That's right.
And, you know, and it was tough in the beginning. It was definitely tough in the beginning. But
yeah, there's so much to your story to unravel there too, because you bring up obviously your father being a major influence in your life, and then now your grandmother, another layer to this whole thing of another major influence, and somebody who's there for you, supporting you in your mental state, right? Of like getting through a lot of this stuff.
I had gone through, you know, I went to college, I went to flight school, you know. I came out of college, there were no jobs. I went to flight school, came out of flight school, right? It was during the first Gulf War.
Oh my goodness.
So there were no jobs.
Right.
You know? So I had all these lofty goals and hopes, and I just couldn't find that thing
right
that worked for me.
So
I always had a job, and I was always looking for a better scenario.
Right.
But I couldn't find it. And then I fell into equipment rentals. Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to, I mean, obviously the easy thought here is your father was an entrepreneur, and he kind of set the path for you. And I think we could dig into that a little bit, but I'm really interested in the story of you and your grandmother here. So you have this 90-year-old woman, because you said it was the last 10 years of her life, and she died at 102, right? So you have this 90-year-old woman. What drew you to her knowledge, right? So like obviously she's your grandmother, but she's asking you to come over here, and I'm going to teach you some things to help you accomplish your dreams. What was it about her character and her persona that drew you to say, you know what, I trust that. Let me listen to her.
She was just always wise, and you know, to be perfectly honest, my mom had passed, my dad had passed, and I was kind of in a little bit of a lost little scenario. And she was that last branch to hold on to. And I should have known that, how much, after, let me put it this way, after spending the 10 years with her, I understood how my father was successful. I got it.
So this is your father's mother, I'm assuming,
exactly. Right? I got it. She had a way.
What were some of that? What were some of her ways? Was it structure?
A was structure, and B, she knew how to talk to people. She knew how to talk to people, and you don't live to almost 102 and not have seen everything. And then as a black kid growing up in a white world, trying to do things that other black kids weren't doing, she'd seen it. She'd done it. Her brother was a well-known dentist. He was a dean of dentistry at the University of Hartford, the first black dean of dentistry there. Her son was wildly successful. She had nurtured this. Her husband was successful. She'd nurtured men to be strong and capable. And she did it for me. She totally did it for me.
Well, you and I, we also talked a little bit about when you first came in about being a minority-owned business, and then obviously going to Howard University, being an all-black college, and this being very, very important and part of your history, right? I'm going back to your grandmother again because you're saying she's kind of the person that has led that path for all of the people in your life, right? Yeah. So where did she grow up? Tell me a little bit about her and her name, of course.
It's Sarah Weber, and she grew up in Virginia, like right on the Chesapeake Bay there, and the daughter of a sharecropper, pretty much. So
not easy upbringings.
Not easy upbringing at all.
So she saw a lot around her.
Saw insanity.
Right, of course.
I mean, she grew up, there wasn't phones or, cars.
Right.
It was donkeys, literally.
Right. I mean, I'm assuming we're talking like the early 1900s, right? Like what year was she born? Probably like 1910 or 1920?
Something like that. Yeah. It might have been the late 1800s.
1800s, wow. Right. So she's a little girl in the 1910s. And
so she's seen it all.
Hard to wrap our brains around that time frame, right? Like,
she went from walking to school, walking 10 miles to school.
Right.
And she came from a brilliant family, so there were doctors and Indian chiefs, and her brothers and sisters became all kinds of.
So her whole family
things.
Obecame obviously tremendous adversity. She grew up in the South.
Yep.
She's black girl. Right.
Walked to school.
There's definitely
people hanging.
Right.
Literally.
Racism, lynching, racism all over.
Seen it all.
Right. And she has the perseverance and the strength to get through all of this and then raise all these men.
Yeah.
I say raise, but support, help, pave the path, right?
Pave the path.
Right.
Everybody's doing well, man.
Which is so important to the entrepreneurial journey and the business journey. I think we could link the two in the sense that so many people have their own stories. They have their own adversities that they're overcoming, their own difficulties that they're overcoming. And this is something that Sarah Weber, seeing, like you said, lynchings and things like this, like obviously overcoming all of that and knowing that she had a bigger purpose and following that path to that bigger purpose. And
as we go through the story, my story,
yeah,
she had her hand in me avoiding every pitfall.
Amazing.
Every trap that was set for me. And there was a lot of traps.
Right.
As we go through my story, you'll see that, for whatever reason, this industry did not want me in it.
Yeah, well, we know a lot of the reasons. We've talked about that a little bit too offline. But yeah, so to kind of like cap on her strengths there, I think when we relate it to the entrepreneurial journey is really her structure that she says, you were saying she had a structure, a way of doing things that she followed and she taught you this way. And then communication.
And insight and intuition. That was uncanny. Like, she saw it, way before it happened.
Did she ever share with you her why, like her purpose for all of this? Like, obviously she was very purpose driven to be able to get through all of this.
Yeah, there were a lot of reasons, there was a lot of reasons, and a lot of it is just her own personal legacy.
That was important to her.
That was really important to her.
Right.
She had done some things in her life that that she was very proud of and that she wanted to continue. And the only way that was going to happen was if her grandsons and granddaughters, were focused and capable. And she made it her point to make sure that I was prepared. And I'm really grateful for it.
Did she ever speak of any limitations? So, I mean, you brought up granddaughters, right? So obviously, we have.
Yeah, but unfortunately, she had 2 sons, and one son and her didn't really get along in the end. And he's the one with the granddaughters.
Okay.
And then our other son had all boys, one had all girls. And,
but
our side still, we were still good here. And so she put all her energy really into me.
Right.
My other brother, my younger brother, he wasn't really around. My older brother's successful on his own. He like a 14, 15-time New York Times bestselling author, makes movies. He's doing his own thing. He was good. She was worried about me. And at that time, my younger brother was working for my older brother, so she wasn't so much worried about those two. She was worried about me. She really focused on me.
Was she hard sometimes on you guys? Did you feel like she was hard on you?
She, at that point I was older, so she wasn't really hard on me. She knew how to talk to me.
That's it.
She knew exactly how to talk to me so that I got it and understood it. And that was her gift.
Right.
She knew how,
which is a huge leadership quality, right?
It's
massive. To be able to get all these people to do kind of all these great things, these amazing things, overcome tremendous adversity, accomplish all this stuff, and not doing it in a way where it's abusive, right? Like she's not like.
I tell people to this day, I'm a single guy. I'm never married. I have no children. My relationship with her is the greatest relationship I've ever had with any woman. And I sometimes I think about this when I'm laying in bed by myself, and I'm like, I'm so lucky to have had that relationship. And then on the other side, I'm like, damn, did she doom me?
Did she mess me up with the other women in the world?
Exactly. Like, am I doomed? Is there no woman that is going to know how to deal with me?
Well, it's an interesting thing to bring up, right? I mean, it's. To deal with you, but obviously there's never going to be a comparison, right? And it's not fair to anybody to try to compare them to either. Yeah. You and I share a very similar quality. My grandmother and I were super close. We shared the same birthday. I was raised with her in the house, and I would say the same exact thing that you'd said is that I have other siblings, I have other cousins, but me and her, we had a special bond where she knew how to communicate with me. I was always in trouble. I was always getting yelled at. Something was going on, right? Mm-hmm. But her name was Denise, but we called her Dudu. And Dudu knew how to talk to me. She knew how to bring me in, rein me in, and then get me to focus and do whatever needs to get done. And I remember many conversations with her about anything in life, right? Like my temper, school,
women.
I was just gonna say women. When I had my first girlfriend, and her telling me about hey, you better watch out.
This is the woman that bought the ring the one time I thought I was gonna get married. She bought it.
So I actually, when I got engaged to my wife, it was my grandmother's ring. She passed it down to me to be able to get engaged. So
it wasn't her ring, but she gave me the
money to do it. Yeah,
to do it. Yeah.
But it's a very special bond that we have with our grandmother. So it's interesting that we just kind of went down that path, and you shared so much there, because as you're saying it all, I'm going, man. And I ended up naming my first daughter after my grandmother, Denise. So very, very, very special. But again, I mean, going back to the communication side of it, it's like these women, they taught us how to communicate with people, right? Mm-hmm. As leaders, you have a company now where you have 8 employees, and you work on a job site where it's very hard to be empathetic and compassionate, right? Like you can't just be like, "Hey, buddy, I'm you missed you didn't put the pin in or the safety gear on." You have to be like, "Dude, what just happened?" Right? Yeah. But you have to do it in a way where you communicate as a leader and where they understand where you're coming from and
respect it.
And respect it.
And respect it. And don't take it as this guy's being a jackass. They take it as this is all he's got.
Right.
And if you're going to be on the team.
Mm-hmm.
it has to be right.
Right. And so that goes
I
back
don't
to
have
structure.
an option. Yeah, I don't have an option. There's no plan B.
Right.
This is it. So if you want to be here and I'm doing right by you,
right. That's it.
There's no option.
That's right. Well, and it's a great way to lay down the communication with your employees. I want to move now to your dad, because obviously now you're growing up in this entrepreneurial household. And again, I think the foreground is being set for you of, again, another minority-owned business owner, your dad. Well, I say again, but actually he's laying it out for you. You're the again, right?
Well, all these MBE, my dad did this in the 70s.
Right.
When, he was breaking ground.
Right.
In that whole space back then.
So what's the conversation at home when, I'm sure you went to school with other black kids, right?
No.
Oh, okay. Excuse me.
There wasn't like another white black family within like 5 miles of my
So
house.
you were just surrounded by
It's
other
the
white
North Shore,
kids.
Long Island.
Right, in Port Washington, yeah.
Yeah, we're the black kids.
So this is also an interesting dynamic. So what I was going to ask you, and maybe you have an answer there, or if you don't, then we'll pivot to the other question around this, is what does it look like against or with the other black kids whose parents maybe aren't seeing the same success that maybe your parents are seeing in terms of getting through this adversity that they're dealing with in the 70s, right?
It was interesting, growing up in Port Washington, but there's another layer to this.
Yeah, sure.
And the other layer is my entire life I've had a beach house in a little town on Long Island in the Hamptons called Sag Harbor. And Sag Harbor is home to the wealthiest black resort community in the United States. It's Sag Harbor, and then there's Martha's Vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up every summer in this neighborhood of
successful black people.
Black Indian chief, doctor, lawyer, professional. They were there. So every summer I spent with like these affluent black kids, and every winter I went back to
affluent white kids.
Yeah, that was it.
Right. So then where we're really going then is your circle of influence, right? So where my question actually was actually a misinformed question. It's a better question is really about your circle of influence and how that influenced you to get to where you are today, right? So again, relating it back to our entrepreneurs out there and thinking about our business leaders out there and who they're surrounded by, right? And there's so many different motivational speakers who'll speak about like, show me your friends, show me your like top 5 friends or the last people you called on your phone or whatever, however you want to look at it, right? And I'll tell you where you're going to be in life, right? And when you think about this, and I want you to just jump right in. When you think about your circle, it's like, man, you had a lot to strive towards, right?
I had a lot to strive for because I I had these, I wasn't that great at school, but I grew up around these like savant, like kids, and my cousins and whatnot were like, these brilliant,
right? Your brother's an
students,
author,
like just amazing students,
right?
And I wasn't an amazing student.
What did you struggle with in school?
Everything. Yeah.
Did you ever get tested?
I was good at, which is sales, doesn't translate in
communications
school.
Is what you're good at.
Yeah. And that doesn't work in school.
Which is why we're on a microphone right now.
Exactly.
Did you ever get diagnosed with anything?
Yeah, but I didn't really buy it because I'm not dyslexic. I mean, but they tried to say that I was, they just would come up with any excuse to say, instead of saying, he just learns a little different. You know what I mean? He, that the way you're teaching, I don't learn that way. So now, why did you teach it all day, and I'm going to be in the back like, is it over yet?
Right. Why did you choose to reject the idea of being dyslexic?
Because I'm not.
Okay.
I mean, and I'm not saying that because I don't want to be.
Right.
If I was, I'd say I was.
I am, okay.
But I'm not. I just learn, dyslexia is like, when the words are in out of order and stuff. I don't see it that way.
It's more than that. Well, the reason
maybe
why
there is more to it.
Yeah,
that I don't
that's
really
actually
know.
why I asked you, was because I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
And I've been writing, so I'm working on. So I'm gonna have to meet your brother, right? Because I'm working on writing my book right now. And so I started doing some digging into dyslexia and learning more about it. And I thought the same thing, right? I was just like, well, I don't always see things backwards. I do see a lot of words backwards and numbers backwards.
Look,
and
I
and
don't
have
see that at all.
But it's more than that. It is about the way we learn.
Yeah, I totally learn different than other people.
We learn
that.
Let me ask you, in school, so like for me, and you tell me if this was true for you. For me, I went through school without reading a textbook. But for me, the way I learned was by listening to the teacher. And I still do that today with everything I learned today is through YouTube videos and podcasts. But to read is like, I can't, right?
I'm not the greatest. I mean, I read. I do read.
Do you read audio? So I read audiobooks. Do you read audiobooks or do you read
read book books.
Paper books?
Yeah, I read paper books, but
or Kindle,
I'm not the
right.
biggest, to me, I'll take a book with me on vacation
right.
and read something.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to read on planes.
Cool.
And stuff like that. But
yeah, like I would listen.
It's got to be something that I'm interested in. If
Yeah.
it's nothing, like if you're giving me like a math text and I have no interest in it, it's going to put me to sleep.
Yes, I'm the same.
I'm 2 pages and I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
Literally. But if it's something that interests me, then I can read it all night.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can binge it. But if I'm not interested in it, it's
challenging.
Text puts me to sleep.
Right. Well, so it's interesting. So we kind of went down that little bit of a path there, but yeah, I for me, so being dyslexic, what I've learned from doing my research on it for writing this is it's almost like a superpower, I feel, because we just, you said it, we learn differently. And whether you're dyslexic or not, but just by learning differently, it's kind of like a superpower because there is that text way of learning and it's just like, it's very rote, right? It's like, learn this, memorize it, blah, blah, blah. But like for me, I feel, and from what I've learned about other dyslexics and maybe other people who learn like you, is that we could learn that, but then we create outside of that and we kind of draw outside the lines and create this whole other world for ourselves that is really cool. And I like being outside the lines. That's why I'm an entrepreneur, a former corporate person. But, to bring it back to you again and to your school and everything, right, and these people around you, and going back to, you have all these people who are doing well in school. You're not doing so great in school, and you have these successful people around you. You have this circle of influence. There's no room for failure.
Thanksgiving, Christmas is horrible.
It's horrible.
I've got cousins. They're like, they're going off to med school, doing this and doing that, and graduating first in their class, and then they're looking down the end of the table and they're looking at me, and I'm just like, I'm really good at dirt bikes. Bro.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have to get into the dirt bikes.
I'm really good on a skateboard.
I got my skateboard in the trunk. We're gonna hit that in the parking lot.
Yeah, like I'm good there.
So, but Howard University is not easy to get in. Just because you're black doesn't mean you get in.
It's a lot harder now,
right?
Than it was when I was.
But am I right? Right. So
true.
it's not an easy college to get into.
It's not.
So you have this circle around you to where you don't feel like you're doing really well. So, but that's not really true on a whole, on a big scale of things.
I was good at figuring it out.
You were good at figuring it out. Yeah. So tell us about the path from. That's what I want to hear about now. So you have this. You feel like you're bad at school, but you're figuring things out. How do you figure out how to get to Howard University? And why are you drawn to Howard University?
Whatever it took. I really wanted to go. This is a weird story. I got
like
into the university. I think it was University of Phoenix or University of Arizona, one of the two, whichever the bigger of the two party schools was. But they had an amazing water ski team, and I was really into water skiing back then. So I got in there and I got into Howard, and I told my old man, I was just like, I'm gonna go to Arizona. I'm gonna join the water ski team. I'm gonna, go to school in Arizona. It's got good weather. It's good-looking women. Sounds great. And he looked me in the eye and he was like, if it takes me more than 4-5 hours to drive there, you're not going. And I was like, he's like, come on. You know this. You're a troublemaker. I'm going to have to save you.
Oh.
we really need to have this conversation. I love you. You're my son. Me and my dad got along really well. That was my guy, but he knew how to talk frankly to me. I hated his business, but I loved him, and I tried my best to try to figure out how I could get into his business, but he had come up the hard way too. So he wasn't giving anything away. You would have to take it from him. And I didn't have it in me at that time to do that. So, so that didn't work for me, that business. But he was right. I was a troublemaker. And he was like, I'm going to have to save you. You know that. You're going to do some dumb shit, and I'm going to have to come down there and rescue
bail you out.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can't do that if you're like on the other side of the country.
Yes.
So,
and as a parent now, it is very challenging to think about that.
Was. And it's really weird because I'll give you the for instance, you asked me about where I grew up and whatnot.
Yes,
this is a perfect
and I'm
story.
from Queens, so I know Port Washington real well.
So I got into Howard, and a couple of my friends from the Hamptons.
Right.
My black friends.
And I don't know the Hamptons.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I'm a disclaimer right now.
These are a couple of my black friends from Sag Harbor, that spent summers with me in Sag Harbor. They were going to Howard.
And
too.
what are their parents doing, by the way? Doctors, lawyers, kind of thing.
Teachers,
okay, yeah.
So we all go to Howard, and they had grown up in like Queens. The two really close friends of mine that were
part
going
of
to
Queens?
Howard. Hollis,
Queens. Okay.
So they were with all
I'm
black.
from Jamaica, Queens. Shout out to Jamaica, Queens.
Exactly. They were with all black people, but for the most part. So they were, so we get to Howard, and they're like assimilated already. And me, coming from these lily white schools, I was kind of like, literally, I had my water ski hanging on the wall in my dorm at Howard, Drew Hall.
Wow.
My water ski hanging on the wall, I'm just like this kind of almost like a New York surfer kind of kid.
Fish out of water.
Yeah. So we get to Howard, and and that night, my parents drop me off, and then they leave, and it's the whole teary thing, and then that night they have like a big party at Blackburn Center, at Howard for the freshmen. So everybody puts their gear on, everybody's getting fresh. You know what I mean? So we go to this party, and we're all rolling up. I got my boys with me, and we walk into this party, and it's friggin' pitch black up in this joint, and the music is deafening loud.
Right.
And we walk in, and I can't see anything, but there's 1 million people in here, bro. Everybody's black. And, I lose my friends, and I'm walking around for about 10 minutes, and I realize that I'd never been around that many black people in my whole entire life.
Right. Outside of a family party, right?
Nah.
Not even.
There was like 3,000 black people in there. I've never been around that many black people in my life, period. Anywhere.
Wow.
And I kind of had a little panic attack.
Mm.
And I bounced out of there and went back to the dorm. Literally, I was only there maybe 40 minutes. And I sat in the dorm and waited for everybody to come back. Everybody came back. We were looking for you. I was like, oh, man, I was having a great time. I didn't know where you guys were. But
Played it
the
off
truth
well.
was, I was sitting in the dorm like, who am I and where am I?
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was real interesting. I tell people that story. I don't even really believe it, but that's the truth. I'd never been around that many black people. But then, subsequently, I grew to love Howard. I had an amazing time there. But that says everything right there. When a black kid freaks out because he's around too many black kids.
Yeah, which is something that I kind of want to talk about a little bit because, like you just said, who am I and where am I? And just, speaking with you and listening to all of this and listening to your grandmother's story and everything, and it's like, man, you think about this woman who grew up in the South, right, and is surrounded by black people her whole life, right, and then now she's raised this family who's grown themselves to a point where her grandson only knows white people, which, I mean, we're on this topic a lot, but I think it's really important because of, one, everything that happens in our society today, right? So you're dealing with something that can happen in the boardroom, right? Where a black guy comes up or a black woman comes up or a minority, anybody.
That prepared me for this.
Okay. That's where I want to kind of use this, right?
But that middle ground, that how do you, because
yes, how?
I hate to say that all white people don't like you. And, you know, nobody wants to believe that, but it's the truth.
I think everybody has.
You know, and they all have their own proclivities, and for whatever reason, they feel they're better or whatever, they're smarter or this or that.
And Patrice O'Neill would say all black people don't like white people, right?
Exactly, you know. But I was lucky because I had my grandmother.
Right.
A, she knew how to talk to me, and B, she'd figured it out.
Right.
She knew how to operate as a black person in a white world. She knew it, and she knew it cold, and that's what she taught me over that.
But you
10
see,
years.
so that's the part that's important to me is that because this is what any minority that's walking into a boardroom is experiencing, right? And whether it's they're walking into a boardroom as to try to level up in their career in the corporate world, or they're walking in the boardroom to pitch an idea as an entrepreneur or something. This is the adversity they're dealing with. They're walking into a boardroom and they're surrounded by people who either accept them or don't accept them, or that they've never been, like as exposed to or anything. Yeah. And in your situation, you actually did experience this, even surrounded by people of the same color of you, right? So that's regardless of the fact. What's really important is the question you asked yourself of, who am I? Because that is what makes the big difference for that entrepreneur, that business leader, and yourself, obviously. When you walk into that room and you know who you are, then it doesn't matter who's sitting around the table.
Exactly.
Right?
And I've gotten to the point.
So you grounded yourself.
Yeah. Well, she taught me, and it took some teaching, is to I walk into every room as myself. I don't walk into any room as anybody else. Right. I'm me. I'm Terrance Weber. Right. I bring my unique experiences, talents, and problems into every room I go into. And she made that okay.
Do you remember that moment when you were sitting in the dorm room and figuring out who you are?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like it was yesterday.
What was the first thought of who you were that popped in your head?
I had no clue. I was lost.
You were just lost.
I was
getting through
lost.
the cloud, getting through the fog.
Yeah, I was just completely lost. I was like, "Yeah, can I just go water skiing?"
What would that's then
interesting. I found this cat that went to med school with my brother from Cali, who was a water skier, and we went water skiing every day, 5 a.m.
After that.
And I used to come back walking across,
across
literally the water ski over my shoulder in a wetsuit.
Right.
And all these black kids would be looking at me like,
where is this guy from?
Where is he? First of all, where is he going with the wetsuit and where's he coming from?
Right.
But meanwhile, we were going down to Maryland every morning. We'd leave at like 4 a.m. and we'd water ski from 5 to like 6:30, and then haul it back up to DC
and go to school. That was your zone.
And that was my zone. And that's when it, all of the things started to click and that's when I started, being okay with who I am.
I was just going to ask you then. How did that start feeling?
A lot better.
Yeah.
But then it took a long, then it was a couple of decades before, I'm really comfortable now.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to get comfortable, a lifetime.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, let's talk about that, right? Because now you overcame one challenge, right? Mm-hmm. You found a way. You got this guy. You're water skiing. You found a flow, is what you found, right? Which is really important. I mean, again, the business life, the entrepreneurial life, the personal life, anything we go through in life, it's really important that we ground ourselves, right, and find out who we are, our identity. That's really important and needed, because then once we can do that, then we could do anything else, right?
Exactly.
And then we're in our flow. But there's still challenges because we're still stretching ourselves, right? So you can't just stop there.
And it was, so it was now, the whole thing, and all of a sudden,
you graduate.
Whereas, I went to a white school, so the whole dating thing, and this is the '80s before MTV Raps made being black cool. It was like disco sucks. It was weird. It was weird. It was a whole weird deal. Can you really date your friend's sister as the only black kid in town?
Your white friends, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I mean? So then
I don't know. Could you?
Yeah, on the DL.
On the DL. Okay. She's going through a phase.
Yeah, exactly. I was just there to help her. But yeah, it was
a challenge there.
Yeah, it was, the whole deal was a challenge. But then you get to Howard, and it's like all of a sudden you're that guy.
Everything opens up.
Yeah.
Cool.
You're running around DC like.
Having fun.
Yeah.
Now, did Dad have to come and bail you out at any points?
Yeah.
Of course. Okay.
Of course.
So let's go back to, we find that flow, right? And now you're happy and everything. But obviously we have to challenge ourselves in life because that's the only way we're going to get to the next step. So you're in the flow. What's the next challenge? So obviously you graduate Howard.
Yeah.
And you kind of recapped a lot of this in the beginning of all of this, getting into sales and being in communications and everything.
When I first got out of Howard, I was looking for gigs and whatnot. Then I went. I had a nightclub actually called The Playground on 23rd and 11th. I did the nightclub phase. I did the phase
where you owned your own nightclub.
Yeah.
So you already came out with that entrepreneurial mindset of like, I'm gonna have my own business.
Yeah. Well, we tried it, and it didn't really go as well as I'd like it to. What
do you think the mistake that you made then?
Too many partners.
Too many partners.
We were young. We were all young.
Right.
We were all young kids.
What was the issue?
It was all friends that I met like out in the Hamptons. These are my white friends. So like it was some of my white friends, some of my black friends. We all put our money together, and we all.
And what do you think the issue was? Like, so if you look back at it now as a business owner, right?
Too many cooks. Too many cooks.
Too many cooks. Yeah, but let's take a second, right? So like I look back, I started a few businesses when I was younger, right? And now looking back with all the knowledge I have now, I'm like, okay, I see where I went wrong here. So one of them, I'll tell you right now, I know where I went wrong. It was I just didn't follow it through. Right? It was a great idea. It was a great concept. There's other companies like it that are successful. By the way, it's my father makes hair and skincare products on the side. He's a PA, but also does that. And I was like, hey, we're going to do this with your foot bomb. And I took the reins with it, helped them tremendously, and then I didn't have the vision for it, and I stopped short.
I got a friend.
So
I got
same
a friend
thing
from out in the Hamptons, a black guy, that created his own skincare and products and sold them on the streets of Harlem.
Right.
Sold his company for almost $1 billion to Lever.
That's the point. Is that
literally
it could be very successful, but you got to see it through.
He's one of the dudes that I watch as to how I make moves now.
And we're going to have him on the podcast soon, right?
He would be a good one, bro.
He would be a very good one. But the point that I'm making was
turn Oprah on. You'll see him on Oprah.
The point that I'm making, well, I want to know who he is, but I know you don't want to divulge yet. The point that I'm making is that looking back at that experience, I can put a pinpoint where the issue was, and I can learn from that. And other entrepreneurs that are listening and business leaders that are listening can learn that.
Oh, that's the one thing that worked for me is I made a million mistakes. Mm-hmm. But what people didn't realize was I was learning from each one of them.
That's right.
You know what I mean? People thought, oh, he's just failing and floundering. So what you learned from
the too many partners is I'm never going to have too many partners again.
Exactly.
Okay.
I own U.S. Aerials 100%, other than a small piece that I have that I have with Julia, who's my director of finance.
Gotcha. Yep.
And that's because she earned that.
Right.
She truly earned.
Well, like your dad taught you, right? Nothing's going to be handed over, right? You didn't work this hard, which I want to speak about because we'll fast forward through a little bit, and we could always go back to some of the other stories there. But I want to speak about becoming a minority-owned business because I think that that's also really important to your story, but also other minorities that are listening. And minorities don't just mean a black man, right? It's a black woman too, but it's every minority out there, and women especially as well, right? They're also so. I want to kind of speak about that because I think that that's really important to understand the work that goes around that and the reason for it, right? Because on your website, it is very clear. This isn't like vague or anything. You put it on there like, hey, we are the only right?
There's nobody else that looks like, well,
so let's speak about
I do that for a couple of reasons.
Yes, that's what I want to know.
One is we do more non-minority business where it doesn't matter than minority business at this point in time in our business. Mm-hmm. But there is a massive minority business that I make a lot of sense to do business with because of my minority status.
A market.
Yeah, there's a huge market for MBEs out there, and it's just a question of me educating people along the way.
So let's talk about the process, right? So how do you become a minority-owned business? Obviously, you have to be a minority, right?
You have to be a minority.
Okay, and next?
and then the state has to certify you. So I'm a certified minority, which is really kind of weird because I had to sign an affidavit that I was a minority. I was like, wow, look at this, bro. Look it's not, like I have to literally sign an affidavit that I am a minority. Mm-hmm. So you have to be a minority, and then you have to be in business for 2 years. Mm. And then you have to meet the criteria that the state has set. The state, city, and whatever organization that, because there's many different MBE certificates that you can get. You know?
And so outside of you mentioned the marketing, the big market for it, but outside of that, in terms of the relationship with the government and why they assign this, what are the perks? What are the reasons that you might want to become a minority-owned business or certified?
Well, a certified minority business has the upside for us is that it's the state dictating to the marketplace that, okay, you know, I hate to say it like this, but white males, you have the entire pie. Mm-hmm. And it's not just good for you, our community, and our country, for everybody to have a stake in that. Mm-hmm. And the only way that they can get in is if we do this little carve out. Mm-hmm. And they've taken, like, on a lot of the public works contracts and a lot of the contracts where, you know, the private contracts where they get tax rebates and things of that nature, you know. In
order to encourage them to hire a minority-owned business.
They have a minority spend, whereas, like, if you meet if you meet your minority participation goals, then there's, you know, almost like a reward on the back end.
Right. Do you find that this process works? Do you think it's working in the long run?
Yes,
for
I see it working.
Okay.
Especially in New York. I think New York has is the gold standard, and the rest of the country is beginning to fall in line and realize that, you know, you can't just have one segment of the society control all the business,
right?
And, you know, and in getting into business, my evaluation was, how badly do they need what I'm going to be offering, and what would the benefits be, you know, to becoming an MBE. And it's a really big upside. There's no defense to it. And from my position as a business person, if I can build a successful business, which I'm building sans the MBE, the MBE just makes it that much stronger.
Stronger, yeah.
So,
what advice would you give to our listeners out there who are minorities and that are looking to maybe get an MBE or maybe don't even consider it quite yet? What advice would you give them in terms of following that path or getting?
Well, it's a lot of work, so make sure that there's a market for what you're doing.
Otherwise, you're doing it for not.
Yeah, you know,
don't just do it to do it. Is what you're saying.
I'm lucky enough where, you know, everybody needs my product.
Right.
In a vertical city. I mean, you know, I'm offering a solution that everybody needs. And therefore, you know, it's an easy sell in an MBE in an MBE platform.
Right.
You know, just because there's a plethora of people that need it, my whole deal is to, you know, and that's the reason why it's so obvious, is because, you know, if they don't know you exist, they can't utilize your services.
Right. And did you have to get like a special attorney or CPA or anybody like that involved to help with this process?
No, we did it all in-house. Now we've got a guy that's helping us with it just because we're being so prolific with it. Like, we're going after everything. Every program that we can take
that's available,
of,
right?
We're taking.
Are there any grants involved in this? Do they offer any type of funding?
We've gotten some grants, but they were basically along the PPP loan stuff along those lines.
So it's not.
I'm sure there are. We haven't gotten there. Actually, this week coming up is the New York State MBE forum up in Albany. So we'll be going up there this week, and we'll be looking for those grants. If they got them, We'll find them. I've got a friend actually that I was with in Philly, and he got a really nice grant to buy a building. You know, he got like, I think he was telling me like 1.2 million, something like that, from a governor's grant. And I'm sure they do that in New York too. So we'll be looking for stuff. If they've got them, then we're the perfect candidate for it.
Do you see any, for lack of a better way of phrasing this, end in sight for having to have these types of programs? And I don't mean to end these programs. It's not the question. The question isn't about ending them. The question is about our society changing to where we don't need programs like this any longer.
I don't know when or if that'll happen, but I know this much. There is no greater time if you're a woman or a minority to get in business than right now. This is the greatest time in this country's history for a minority or a woman to be an entrepreneur.
Why do you say that?
The market. This is as open as the marketplace has ever been to minorities. It's never been this open to minorities. You know, it's always been an old boys club.
Right. So it's kind of like shedding all of that.
And this is as open as it's ever been in my lifetime, and therefore, it's
only going to get better.
Let us pray, and things could either get better or go in the opposite
direction.
No.
We're not going there. I like that answer. We'll leave it there. That's perfect. I love that. I think that's so important in going into your equipment rental company. So let's just talk about that for a real quick second here. So obviously you got not the backing, but more of the education from your dad with the construction industry, right? So
what I did get from my dad was my dad was a really good businessman and did a lot of business with a lot of the larger construction companies in the region. So I either know the fathers, the sons, the grandsons of those businesses, and that's was the basis for who I went after when I got into the equipment rental business.
Right, which is exactly, so that's perfect, because what I wanted to ask you about, because you mentioned something about strategic partners. And I think that's so important for people to really understand what a strategic partner is and how they play into the business. I just had another podcast a little while ago, and same thing with that business owner. He had mentioned a bunch of strategic partners, some that we know, like Microsoft being one of them, and AWS and everything, and just trying to unravel that for people, because for me, so I own an insurance agency, and when I meet with carriers, they go, "What do you mean you're not selling?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to go sell the little home and auto policies. Like, nothing wrong with that. I love them, right? But I'm going to have my salespeople do that, my producers do that. What I'm interested in is the partnerships, right? For me, what I'm selling is what we do and forming a partnership with the other organization, because that organization leader, like yourself, right? You have 8 employees and then a plethora of your own strategic partners, right? So if I form a partnership with you, I'm not just selling you a home and auto policy. I'm actually getting access to 50, 100 people by having a partnership with you. So I'd like to hear from you about the way that you form strategic partnerships and how they work in your life.
This is a highly capital intensive business.
Yeah.
So getting into the business, just took a lot, just to get in. And one of the holdbacks was, how much gear can I afford to buy? So, I started the business with, say, $3 million.
Overhead.
Yeah, $3 million worth of gear. So I've got $3 million, and I started out with scissor lifts. So I started out with $3 million with the scissor lifts.
Well, you got to start out with scissor lifts, right? Because they started your career.
Exactly. So I started out with scissor lifts, and we're moving scissor lifts, but they also need booms. They also need forklifts. They also need other things. So I went out and talked to other people in the business that had like businesses and said, "Hey, look, I've got this MBE that gives me access to things that you may not have access to. Okay? I'll allow you to have access to me if you'll allow me to have access to you." So then, we begin to re-rent back and forth from each other. And now my fleet went from $3 million to whatever this guy's got.
Right.
So if he's got $30 million worth of fleet. I've got
million.
access to his $30 million. He's got access to my little bit, plus he's got access to my MBE, plus I'm helping keep his fleet on rent.
Mm.
And then it started with one, and then it went to two, and now we've got 3 strategic partners. But mostly, and then that also helps with like unions and stuff like that. Like in the beginning, you're not big enough to really take on union contracts. So if you have strategic partners that are in a union, you pay them
Right.
to truck in or to maintain on a union site.
Right.
And that keeps the unions happy. That keeps their mechanics busy, and everybody's winning. Everybody's winning.
Right.
And then that allows me to grow as well.
It's that win-win-win relationship,
Exactly.
right? Which is so important. What you mentioned in there is leverage. It's all about leverage. You're leveraging the MBE in this situation in one stance for that partnership or with that partnership, which is really great. And they're leveraging their...
Everybody, you got to realize we're all in the business of rent equipment.
Right.
So they don't want their equipment sitting, and then they know they've got a guy like me that's capable of renting a lot.
Right.
A lot more than I own.
Right.
So, where it doesn't matter on non-union or non-MBE sites and stuff, I'll flood it
Right.
with the other guy's stuff, and then I'll make a percentage on that.
Mm.
And we all win. His gear's staying on rent. He's making money. It all comes down to you pay your bills, and I pay my bills, thank God.
Right.
You know what I mean? So people really want to do business with me.
That's the most important part.
No.
So you started this company, obviously on your own from scratch, doing all the work, the hard work that you've put into it. We didn't really get into the corporate world that you thrived in and went through.
Yeah, I spent 20 years as a sales rep.
Yeah.
In this industry.
Yeah. So you learned a ton.
Yeah. I learned a lot. But and I learned what to do and what not to do. I learned who liked me and who didn't like me, so that when I got my opportunity, I knew what I could do, what I couldn't do, and how to maneuver within my own.
You were learning the whole time. Yeah. I spent close to 15 years working in the corporate world, and same thing is like I always knew I wanted to own my own thing, but I was just learning the whole way. I wasn't always happy, right? Same with you, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But we're
they
just
made
learning.
They unfortunately make it easy.
Yeah, but I think for the listeners, it's like.
But if they made it easy, how would things have been different?
No. Yeah, we need that challenge.
I think
need that challenge.
Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen.
That's right.
It's just unfortunate that I got to see some people for who they really are.
Well, yeah, and it happens in many different ways, but I think and I want to kind of go into where you're headed. But just to kind of like recap a little bit of that 20-year corporate career there that you had, is that
I started with dam equipment.
Yep.
And I did literally a month of dam equipment. It might have been 2 months, before, I got a sizable contract for them, and then they let me go because they didn't want to pay me commission.
Yeah.
And then I jumped over to Able Equipment. I started at Able. And that was interesting because the first time I was with Able for 6 years.
Wow.
And
you said first time, so you left and came back, I guess.
Yeah. So I did 6 years, 6 or 7 years with them, and I was learning a lot. But I didn't know. I didn't know anything. Like I didn't know. All I knew was enough to get me in trouble.
Was there any point when in all of this learning that you were going through when you felt, hey, you know what, maybe this industry is not right for me?
That's interesting you say that, because for the first 6 years that I was with Able, every week I thought it was my last week.
That's a lot of weeks.
It's a lot of weeks, bro. A lot. I'd spent 6 years.
Literally,
I thought every week was my last week. And then we moved into 2008 where, with the crash. And I saw it coming, but I knew my numbers were okay, and then they started cutting people. People started dropping off, and I'm like, and then finally it was Perry, it was Perry, this guy Sam McIntyre and me were the only sales guys left, and I knew Sam was getting itchy because I saw his numbers plummeting, but I still wasn't at the point where I knew whether I was doing well or not. I didn't know whether I was doing well, but I mean, I was renting stuff. I was moving gear, but you don't know what their other guys are doing.
Right.
You have no clue. But I knew Sam was slipping. That much I knew. And I was like, I felt it. I knew he was up to something. And during that period of time, well, more than that, right before, the '08 crash, when I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall, I mapped Manhattan. Literally, I went block by block and I mapped the city. And I knew where everything was. I knew where every piece of gear was, whether it was on the 100th floor or in a basement, whether it was on the street level. I knew where everything was. And I was strategically trying to find out who the whales of the industry were. So, at that time it was, the big players were United, Pride, and this company, Independent Aerial. And Able was, we were making nice headways, but we were still small compared to those three. And, everywhere I was going, I was seeing this Independent Aerial stuff everywhere. And I said to myself, I started asking questions like, well, who's your sales rep? And they kept saying the same name, Mike Rand. But when it came to United or Pride, they'd give me 15 different names.
Right.
So I'm going, there's no way this one guy can have all this equipment in the city. And he did. So I figured, I'm going to start to strategically go after this guy's accounts because he's got too many. There's no way he can hold all of them.
Service all of them.
Exactly. So I started making a little bit of headway. And then there was this one big account.
Wow.
A big curtain wall outfit. I'm not going to say their name, but really big curtain wall outfit. And I found out that the decision maker they were doing the John Jay College building in like Midtown. So the decision maker was going to be like on the 18th floor in the shanty at like 2:00 on a Wednesday. I did my thing and found out where he was going to. So, that Wednesday came by, 2:00. I'm on the 18th floor, standing outside the shanty, and I knock. And the door opens, and I see the guy. Fits the description perfectly. I beeline to him, stick my hand out. Terrance Weber, Able Equipment. I'd love to discuss your equipment needs. And he looks at me and he smiles, and the guy behind him is just cheesing. And I'm just like, why is this guy cheesing straight face? Blah, blah. I'm going through my pitch. You know what I mean? He's, we're on our way to lunch. And the other guy's just cheesing. And finally, the other guy kind of pushes his way to the front and he sticks his hand out and he says, Mike Rand.
Yes,
nice to meet you. You've been real busy. And I'm like, wah, wah, wah.
Man.
So I went to lunch with him.
Yeah.
And he
That's
takes me he takes me to lunch, gives me his business card, buys lunch, and gives me his business card. He says, in the next 12 months, you're going to be out of a job. And when that happens, I want you to call me. I got a job for you. So
it's to go back and get all your accounts.
And then at that point, basically, he kicked me out of the
lunch.
Yeah, out of lunch, and off I went. And he sat there with the contact and did what he did.
Wow.
And we kind of stayed in touch, but I was chipping away at his accounts anyway.
Sure.
I was
of course.
making a little headway. And then, the economy tanked and, Sammy's accounts were tanking. So Sammy, says to himself, well, if I fire Terrance, I'll absorb his accounts. There's nowhere for him to go.
Mm.
It's a recession.
Right.
Too bad, so sad. So, I come in, I call him actually, because at that point I was feeling a little confident in myself, and I was going to ask for a little raise. So he says, yeah, meet me at the office at 10 o'clock. So I meet him at the office at 10 o'clock. He fires me.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm like,
you're going in for a raise.
I'm looking at him. Yeah, I'm looking at him like, but I was so appreciative of the Laganis family, who were just good. They're good people to this day. I consider them mentors, friends, family, strategic partners. They own Able Equipment.
Ah, okay.
And that I was really so appreciative to him, because at the time I needed that job. So literally, he fires me. I basically go in the bathroom and I call Mike Rand, and he says, yeah, come over. You can start today. So instead of being an asshole on the way out the door because this schmuck just fired me because he doesn't think I could get another job, I was really nice. And I wrote a really nice letter to the Laganises, and it was genuine. It was from the heart.
Sure.
Because I was really grateful. And when I'm skipping steps here, but when I got the job at Able, I swore to myself that I wasn't going to cut any corners. I wasn't going to skip any steps. And that I wasn't going to lie, cheat, or steal. And I didn't. The whole time I was there, I played it straight. I wrote him a really, the owner and his wife a really nice letter, and they were really appreciative. And then I went to work for Independent Aerial, and I went about torturing Sammy as much as I could possibly. I used to call him at like 3:30 in the morning and tell him that he should get out of bed because there's no money in the bed. Because if there was money in the bed, I'd be in there with him. I was torturing his accounts. I leaned on I pulled all my stuff. I moved all my accounts, and I just tortured the cocksucker.
We'll mute that part out.
Yeah.
But there was obviously some resentment there between the two.
Yeah, between me and him.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have to do it like that. He could have just been like, look,
he wasn't a part of the Laganis family. He was a manager.
Yeah, but he used to call him like,
right. He was a manager in place.
Yeah, he was a manager. Yeah,
so he had his job to do.
But he had the world by the horns, bro.
Right.
He should be able right now, like in some significant way.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of those cats, and I met a lot of them. Growing up, he was black too. He was the only other black guy at that time that I knew in the whole business. And that was the thing that pissed me off, was that I treated him like I gave him a lot of respect.
You thought you had a kinship because of that.
Yeah, I thought I had a mentor.
Mm.
And yeah.
And that's not always where it comes from, right?
No, it's not. That was another lesson.
It's pretty interesting.
Another lesson.
But the Laganis family became mentors to you.
Yes.
And
yes. How, to this day.
How did that play out?
Mrs. Laganis called me and told me to stop torturing him. That's a true story. She really did. She was like, "Why are you torturing?" And I like this so much.
And what's their cultural background? The Laganis
she's
family?
Jewish and he's Greek.
And Greek and Jewish, okay.
Yeah.
And so they caught wind that you were torturing their manager.
Sammy called her.
Right.
Sammy told her. They told on me.
But from
and Mrs. Laganis literally called me and said, "Stop torturing him, Terrance." I was like, "I'm sorry." Yeah,
but from that formed a good friendship between you and the Laganis family.
Yeah, they're good people.
They understood where you were coming from,
and they understood that that I wasn't out to hurt him. I was out to hurt Sammy, but not them. It had nothing to do with them.
Which is not something you condone any longer.
And over time they realized that they should have never let me go.
Mm.
And that's why they gave me another opportunity when subsequently Independent Aerial got sold to RSC. And then I worked for RSC for a year, and then United bought RSC 6 months after.
A lot of movement in that industry for you, and you saw a lot of movement around you.
Yeah, well, I didn't see that coming.
Okay.
I was really happy for the owner, who's another mentor of mine, Mike Rand. Shout out Mike Rand.
So that's the sales rep, right? That was
that's the owner.
And now the owner.
He
or
owned Independent Area.
Oh, okay.
And he was the sales
And
rep.
the sales rep. Okay.
He was the sales rep for New York, and he had all the sales guys in Jersey.
And he owned it.
But he was the only sales rep in New York, but he owned the company too.
Right.
He was probably the greatest equipment sales guy. I learned more from him as far as sales.
What do you think his special weapon was in terms of sales? What was his
passion?
Passion.
And he was genuine. I mean, when you're in a business where everybody has the same thing, it becomes a popularity contest. Everybody's got the same thing.
Right. So who do you like?
So, yeah, it's who do you like, who can make friends, and then who can do what they say what they mean, and follow through. Yeah. So it all comes down to that.
Huge. And I would also imagine that he's an excellent communicator and storyteller.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Very good at the bar.
Yeah. Very good at the bar.
He's very good at the bar. And fishing.
Okay. So I'm sure you got your water skis out at that point, right?
Well, no. He's into fishing. I'm not really into fishing. He's into like big, serious.
So even with the boats involved, you don't bring a rod and some skis.
I never really went out fishing with him because I'm not a fisherman.
Yeah.
But I'm into like performance boats. So I'm into like fast boats. So
what's your favorite fast boat right now?
The one I'm building.
Oh, what are you building?
I'm building
We're switching gears, as you can see.
A 32 progression.
What kind of boat is that? I'm assuming power boat, right?
Yeah, it's a performance cat.
And how many feet is it?
It's 32 feet, and it's got 450. I'm gonna have to show it to you this way because
and
there's no.
And we're gonna have to show Lara that too because Chris White's Marina, Chris White, he's big into boats and he knows a ton about them, more than I would ever even think about. Oh wow, that's really cool. Well, for our listeners out there, he's showing me a really cool boat that I can't describe because I don't know much about boats. My father's a sailor. That's about it. Oh, that's gorgeous. See, I like the inside.
Well, this is one that's already
I like the
done.
leather seats.
This is mine. This is mine that's not complete yet. They're working on it now.
That's a beautiful boat, man.
Yeah.
But
that's my passion.
So speaking of that passion, and as we start to wrap up this, I mean, this was really great. I learned a tremendous amount from you, and I know our listeners did too. But where do you see your business going? So you spoke about so many great entrepreneurs in your industry and these families. Where do you see yourself going in this business now?
As far as we can go, but we've been very fortunate.
What's your vision?
This is a very tough business, and it's very capital intense. And most people, it takes 3 or 4 or 5 years to get profitable in this business. We've been profitable since year one. We quadrupled.
What was the key to that year one?
The fact that I put 20 years in sales.
The knowledge behind it.
Yeah. So I had a base of business already.
Partners, reputation.
They knew exactly
knowledge
what they were
of
getting. And then I had, it was strategic in what I did. The first jump from able to independent aerial was survival. After that, all my moves were strategic. Independent got bought by RSC. Me staying at RSC was strategic, not knowing that they were going to get bought by United 6 months later, but they did. United tried to pigeonhole me and hold me for 30 days and then let me go. And then wanted to hold me with restrictive covenants. We fought that. We won. And we were released without any restrictive covenants. At that point...
which would be like a non-compete of sorts.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
At that point, I really wanted to compete against United. So I attempted to sell my business to Sunbelt, but they, for whatever reason, the district manager at Sunbelt said that his people down south wouldn't understand me. So I went back to Able. At Able, I gained wind. At that point, I was the first sales guy back. It was just me and Perry. And then, that's when Able was buying their Deer Park facility they begin to ramp up and grow really rapidly. And I could see within their growth that, that there wasn't a lot of room for me, and they would have never fired me. But I needed more. So at that point, I had to start thinking about my future. So at that point, I was starting to think about, hey, what about if I do this myself? And at that point, I had moved clients from one company to another.
And they followed
Successfully. But they were all known quantities in the marketplace. At this point, I was looking to see if I could move clients to an unknown quantity. If I could move clients to an unknown quantity, then I knew I was ready to open my own shop. So I found this company, Interstate. I didn't find them. They were out there. Interstate Aerials.
So when you mean unknown quantity, you're talking about like a company that nobody really
knew in my marketplace.
Right.
They were known in Jersey and down in Philly, but they weren't known in the,
so you're saying
in the New York marketplace.
Your clients are following you because it's Terrance, but it's Terrance with the backing of
able equipment or independent area that are known names.
Right, and now it's just Terrance.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. Well, I'm saying to myself, well, if I start my own thing, it's just going to be me.
Right.
So
let's see.
If they'll follow me to somebody they don't know, then there's a really high probability.
Kind of like some A/B testing of sorts.
Exactly. Well, that's exactly what I was doing.
Right.
And if they'll do that, then I knew they would follow me with my own thing. So, the rumors were out there that Sunbelt was going to buy them. And, I had really good intel on that. So, I was like, you know what, let me jump over here and see, what's going on. So I went over to Interstate. I left Able, went to Interstate, and it worked.
Wow.
They moved. They moved with me.
Right.
And I was like, well, look at this. And then I got caught up in like growing what I was doing over there, and kind of almost forgot that these guys were on the block. And then next thing I know, they got sold.
But then
I was a little worried. That they were going to try to play that, the restrictive covenants thing, non-compete, game. And to my surprise, because I had no intentions on going to work for them, but I expected them to make an offer. They hired everybody at the company but me, literally.
Yes, you were.
They hired, including people they had fired.
Right.
Previously.
Right.
They rehired them. And I didn't know any of these people. So it wasn't like I've had dealings with them or anything, or I knew them, or, they would have a reason to be like, we don't want this guy. I didn't know these people at all. Like, never met them.
Right.
The one guy that told me that, his people down south wouldn't understand me. That's the only guy that I had ever had any dealings with.
And so what does that mean to you when you hear that phrase or that sentence there?
Oh, I thought he meant that, that his racist bosses down south wouldn't understand a black, uppity salesman.
Right.
That's what I take it. I mean, how else can you take it?
I don't have the experience.
So I mean, they did me a favor and cut me loose, and then I started U.S. Aerials.
And your theories on them cutting you loose was?
No, it was racist.
Okay.
Yeah, straight. They know it. That's why they leave me alone. I poke them all the time, and they don't poke back because
they know
the statute of limitations aren't up yet. So but
again, it's while I like that you position it as an opportunity. They cut me loose. Yeah. But on the other side of it, it's a challenge that you had to overcome too, and something again sitting in that dorm room going, "Who am I?"
Exactly. But I knew who I was at that point. I knew who I was. I knew what I brought to the table, and I knew that they were cutting loose the only person that was in a position to recreate what they just spent $270 million buying. Right. So I'll see him in another 7 years, and then they can make the offer. And that's the way I saw it. I was like, well, there it is. Let me show them now.
During this process, it's been in the back of my mind while you were sharing all this. Was your grandmother still alive?
At that point, she had passed.
She had just passed. Okay.
Yeah, she passed when when I went back to Able.
The second time.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And I just can't not ask this because it's just, I know that we need to wrap up, but you did something that was also really cool in all of this, and that you went after the whale. Like, you were just a guy in a group that looked like it was getting cut down, and you could have just, said, you know what, I'm going to shut her in and just, quit or go to another company or whatever. And you found a whale, and like the Goliath story, right? And you decided to slay that, right? And that opened up another opportunity for you. That mindset, does that come from your grandmother as well? Is that
I mean,
to slay the Goliath?
It's not so much slay the Goliath; it's just live without fear.
Right.
Like, I don't live a life of fear. That's not in my. I don't.
And that's such a great strategy that when you saw it, was like you looked at it and you went like, all these there's multiple people, but then there's this one guy got everything.
Yeah, that's everything. That's everything. We've been very fortunate at U.S. Aerials and how things have launched, and we're very grateful.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, couldn't do it without the team. It's all built around this amazing team that we are nurturing and growing, and we stay focused on the team. We stay focused on people that are trying to help us grow. We stay focused on people who want us to grow and to help us, and everything else we shut out.
Yeah.
And that's it.
It's so true about the team too, because you learn that as you grow and as you get bigger, you can't do it alone. And you look at that guy, Mike, right, who obviously was tremendous, right?
He brought me on.
Couldn't do it alone.
And I became like almost like his assistant in New York.
Right.
And I learned so much.
Right.
I learned, you
can't do it alone.
I learned Steve Laganas put me in the business. Mike Rand taught me the business.
Taught you the business, right? That's beautiful.
And they're both still in my life, and I'm forever grateful to them. I'm so fortunate to have those guys, real people.
Yeah.
That it's and that was a lesson from my grandmother. Identify the people that are there to help you early and fast. Stick with them. Prove yourself to be an asset, and learn, and then your opportunities will open up.
I love that. Yeah, and identifying them. And there's so much in there in identifying them, but it's identifying them. There's so much there: trust, relationship, all of that. As we conclude, and I think this plays into everything that you've been talking about and everything with U.S. Aerials and where you're headed is, your mantra, what you live by is, great things never come from comfort zones. Mm-hmm. Just share a little bit about that with us.
You can't be great if you're comfortable.
Right.
You got to be uncomfortable.
Wake up at 3 a.m. Make sure you poke that bear.
Every day. Every day. Definitely poke the bear.
Terrance,
Definitely poke the bear.
This has been a really great episode. I'm just like awestruck by your grandmother, your relationship, the challenges obviously you overcame, the stories that you shared with us today. I'm really, really grateful for you coming on today. How can people reach you? Website, email address, handles?
They can reach us at
and it will be in
US
the show notes.
Aerials, usaerialsplural.com, or you can reach us
or you could find Terrence on LinkedIn. Apparently he has how many followers, Terrence?
20,000 or so.
Just about.
Yep. Or you can find us at US Aerials on Instagram, or you can find me on LinkedIn, Terrence Weber, or you can find the company on LinkedIn as well. US Aerials and Equipment Rentals LLC on LinkedIn.
Please reach out to Terrence. I'm sure someone like him is always willing to help someone like you. So reach out to him.
You need it, we got it.
That's it.
US Aerials.
Thanks for coming on, Terrence. Appreciate it, sir.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast.